You've been chosen, or forced, to become a Roman legionary. Your first lesson? Pain is a tool, and survival is earned. What did it take to go from a raw recruit to marching as one of the Empire's finest soldiers? Let's find out if you have what it takes. The story of your life begins not with who you are, but where you're from. Picture a small village somewhere under the sprawling expanse of the Roman Empire. Sun-baked fields in Italia, rocky coasts in Hispania, or even the misty edges of Gaul. Depending on the land beneath your feet, your life could follow wildly different paths. For many, your birthplace is your destiny. If you're lucky enough to be born into Roman citizenship, congratulations, you're one of the privileged few. Citizenship isn't just a legal status, it's a ticket to a better life. As a citizen, the law protects you in ways it doesn't protect others. You'll grow up with rights that feel like guarantees, fair trials, the ability to own property, and even access to government grain during times of need. If you're a son, you might eventually earn the chance to join Rome's elite fighting force, the Legion. Your father could be a retired soldier, granted citizenship and farmland after years of service, setting you on a path that's already paved with opportunity. But don't misunderstand, citizenship doesn't mean you live a life of ease. Even citizens work long hours, whether in the fields, at the forge, or on the docks. Privilege in Rome is often about contrast, less about wealth, and more about what others lack. Most people in the empire, though, aren't citizens. In faraway provinces, entire communities live as non-citizens, some by choice, most by circumstance. Born in these regions, you might speak a local dialect barely laced with Latin, your family worshiping gods unknown to the Romans. To you, Rome's footprint might seem as foreign as its soldiers marching through your streets. Yet, over time, its presence shapes your world. Roads connect your village to distant markets, public baths sprout up in towns, and laws pull you under a system far larger than anything you've ever known. Even your name might become Romanized, not by force, but by the slow, relentless weight of assimilation. In some ways, being born to this slower integration is its own unique experience. Take Egypt, for instance. There, sons of local nobility often attended Romanized schools. They may have walked like Romans, spoken Latin fluently, and absorbed Roman customs while never gaining the one thing that truly mattered: citizenship. This divide between cultural assimilation and legal belonging was just one layer in the complex mosaic that made up Roman identity. If you're born a slave, however, your story is far harder. Citizenship for you is an impossible dream unless freedom or manumission is achieved. Generations of work could pass before your family line earns the right to call itself Roman. Yet, even slaves were part of this dynamic system. A freed slave could give their children citizenship and a foothold into society, proof that the Roman world operated on a mix of rigidity and opportunity. By the height of Roman power in the 2nd century CE, this blending of identities mirrored the empire's vastness. People in North Africa, Syria, Hispania, and yes, Britain, could all call themselves Roman despite speaking vastly different languages and practicing wildly varied customs. Some would never even see the city of Rome itself, yet they were connected to it through laws, trade, and conquest. The widening title of what it meant to be Roman wasn't just a practicality. It was how the empire kept its hold over so many different territories. When Emperor Caracalla declared in 212 CE that all free men in the empire were now Roman citizens, it wasn't only a celebration, it was a political move, one that strengthened tax collection and united the population in a new, inclusive identity. And so, As the news of this announcement travels to your distant community, you suddenly find yourself part of something much larger. Born a provincial farmer's child, you might never march on the Grand Forum or drink from Rome's famed fountains. Yet, the empire now claims you as its own. Roman, not just in name, but, for better or for worse, in spirit. At 16 or 17, the future isn't full of choices. It's full of obligations. If you're the son of a farmer, every day looks the same as the one before. Hard, repetitive work to keep the family from going hungry. The thought of spending the rest of your life knee-deep in fields, harvesting grain or tending animals looms large. But then there's the Legion. Soldiers pass through your town now and then, their armor gleaming and their pockets heavy with coin. They speak of adventure, honor, and a pension that could one day grant you land of your own. One path keeps you tied to the same back-breaking labor your father knows, and the other offers something else, something you can't quite resist. For some, the choice is clear. You walk into the recruitment station because the fields have grown too small for your ambitions, or maybe too cruel for your patience. But for others, there isn't much of a choice at all. One day, a local official arrives, bearing a scroll marked with the governor's seal, and reads out your name. You've been conscripted. There's no argument, no appeal. You belong to Rome now. While some men might weep at this moment, others see it as an unexpected opportunity, knowing the army has the power to transform even the poorest farmer's son into something greater. If you were born as a Roman citizen, as a free man within the empire's borders, you're eligible to shoulder the Legion's eagle standard. The promise of training, steady pay, and the potential for glory or status beckons. But if you're not a citizen, if you're from some far-off province conquered by Rome or a people still viewed as outsiders, you won't march under the same banners. Instead, you're directed to the Auxilia, the auxiliary forces, where non-citizens serve with fewer rewards but the same dangers. 25 years of service stands between you and Roman citizenship, a long and daunting stretch, but one that could reshape your family's standing forever. For some men, the prospect is enough to take up the sword without hesitation. For others, it's a desperate gamble for survival. On the day you leave, there's no ceremony, but it feels monumental. Your mother cries, her hands covering her face as she stands at the doorway. Your father doesn't say much, though his shoulders seem straighter. His silence carries something you can't fully read: pride, sadness, or both. Neighbors gather because they've seen what happens when young men leave for the army. Some whisper behind their hands, wondering if they'll ever see you again. Few do, but you try not to think about that, especially not when they're watching. You tell yourself this is your chance to prove yourself, to earn something more than what was handed to you. Even before you put on the uniform, you hear the stories. Veterans talk about long, grueling marches through howling winds in Britannia, or blistering days under the Syrian sun. Others warn of rebel ambushes in dense forests, long stretches of boredom interrupted by flashes of violence. They describe victories etched into history, but also hard battles that left scars far deeper than armor could protect. These stories stir something inside you, a mix of fear, curiosity, and perhaps a strange kind of eagerness. It's easy to picture yourself as a hero, standing tall on some forgotten battlefield. It's less easy to imagine the realities they hint at, but that unknown is part of the draw. Not everyone takes it willingly. Some young men lie about their age to serve early, eager to escape their homes or prove themselves. Others bribe local officials to keep their names off the rolls when conscriptions come. For those caught, the punishment is severe. But for those like you, The young men who stand before the recruiter with hands calloused from work but faces unlined by years, the future is clear. The official looks you over carefully. You're not tall, but your muscles speak of years of lifting tools and cutting wood. Your gait is steady, your eyes level. He doesn't need more than that. After a moment, he nods, makes his mark, and the deal is sealed. You're in. Your life as a legionary has begun. Your first steps into the enlistment site feel heavier than they should, like the weight of a decision finally sinking in. The forum, or recruitment station, isn't grand, just a modest building or maybe even an open space in the town square. A handful of officials sit behind desks, their robes a little more polished than anything you've ever worn. One of them looks up briefly as you step forward and quickly scratches your name into a wax tablet. To him, it's routine, just another name on a list. To you, it's the moment everything changes. Next, a soldier gestures for you to strip. No ceremony, no privacy, just a cold command. Your clothes come off piece by piece until you're left standing bare. The air feels sharp against your skin, but that's the least of your concerns. A figure moves around you, inspecting your body like he's evaluating a draft animal. Hands press the muscle of your arms, fingers prod old scars, and eyes glance over every inch of you, searching for anything that might render you useless to the Legion. An old limp or hidden illness could mean rejection, but today you pass. You're not extraordinary, but you're healthy, and for Rome, that's enough. When the inspection ends, you're handed a tunic, plain, coarse, and far from comfortable. Still, it feels like a uniform, like a first taste of this new identity you're about to inherit. Then comes the moment no one forgets, the sacramentum. You and the other recruits are lined up and instructed to raise your right hand. The words come in Latin, and while you repeat them back, the meaning is clear. You're swearing absolute loyalty to Rome, vowing to follow orders without question, and to defend the empire with your life if necessary. The oath isn't just a formality, it's a declaration that binds you, not just legally, but morally. From this point on, desertion isn't an option. Breaking this vow means death, and you know it. As a new recruit, they hand you 3 gold coins as a signing bonus. You stare at them in your palm, their weight surprisingly reassuring. For a brief moment, it feels like fortune, more money than you've ever held at once. But the realization sets in quickly. It's not truly yours. Your first thought is to send most of it home. Your family will need it far more than you will, especially now that you're gone. If you're lucky, they'll use it to buy supplies for the farm, or maybe save it for the next tax collector who comes knocking. You march out of the enlistment site with a small group of other recruits. The lot of you are young, nervous, and pretending not to notice each other's unease. The silence is occasionally broken. One man mutters jokes no one laughs at, trying to mask his fear. Another glances at the road ahead, pale with nerves, until he steps aside suddenly to vomit. You keep watching, pretending to be unfazed. You refuse to let anyone, least of all yourself, see any hesitation. When night falls and your first camp settles into a strange quiet, the weight of your decision finally catches up with you. You sit on your sleeping mat, staring at the unfamiliar faces around you, and think about running. The thought whispers louder than it should. What if you slipped into the trees before dawn? You've heard of men who try, but you've also heard what happens when they're caught, dragged back to camp, beaten within sight of every recruit, and branded as a coward, the mark on their face a permanent reminder. You can't risk it. Instead, You lie awake, fists clenched, forcing yourself to believe you've made the right choice. By morning, the hesitation hardens into determination. You're not just a boy from the provinces anymore. You belong to Rome now. The first morning hits you like a thunderclap. Before the sun ever creeps over the horizon, the blare of a horn shatters your sleep. A voice follows, sharp and relentless, barking orders in Latin that you barely understand. There's no time to linger under a makeshift blanket or rub your bleary eyes. You're on your feet in seconds, surrounded by men just as startled and confused as you are. Some move too slowly and are met with a swift bark from one of the trainers, or worse, a shove to motivate them. There's no grace to this, no easing in. The Legion doesn't coddle recruits. Your arrival at the training ground reveals what feels like endless chaos. The instructors weave through the group like wolves among sheep, picking targets for harsh corrections as they begin to set the tone. You're handed your first weapon, but it isn't a sword. It's a stick, roughly the length of a gladius, but far heavier. The explanation is simple. If you can train with this weighted version, wielding the real thing in battle will feel almost effortless. They tell you this with no traces of sympathy as your arms begin to ache after only a few swings. 10 minutes in, every movement feels slower. By the end of the session, the stick feels like it weighs a ton, and your hands are blistered and raw. There's no applause or rest, just another order to line back up. The drills begin, and you quickly learn there's no room for error. You're taught to form ranks, shields locked tight, bodies moving in rhythm. At first, it's a stumbling, awkward mess. Shields off-center, feet out of position. The instructor's whistles cut through the air, followed by harsh corrections. Straighter, tighter, they yell, until the lines begin to find their shape. But it comes at a cost. By noon, your legs burn from the strain, and the repetitive drills leave your shoulders screaming. Still, no one dares to slack. A single misstep doesn't just earn rebuke, it invites punishment, not just for you, but for the men around you. Each mistake is a glaring reminder of what failure in battle would cost. For those unfamiliar with Latin, and many recruits aren't, it's another layer of grueling adjustment. The words aren't elegant or poetic, they're curt commands shouted in rhythm. Testudo, Scorpio, Cuneum. These aren't just words, they're survival. Misunderstand a single one and you won't just embarrass yourself, you might doom the man beside you. Vocabulary drills become part of your nights, long hours of repeating terms until they're burned into your mind. It's not glamorous, but if it keeps you alive, you'll do it. But fighting isn't always the priority. At every stop, recruits like you are handed shovels instead of swords. You're taught to dig trenches, ramps, and palisades that transform empty fields into fortified camps. The first time it happens, you wonder what this has to do with being a soldier. It feels like a farmer's work, not a warrior's. But soon, it clicks. These defenses, dug by exhausted hands, are what keep legions alive during sieges or surprise attacks. By the time you collapse onto your mat that night, your body feels unrecognizable, every muscle tortured by the day's labor. Mistakes aren't tolerated lightly. Drop your stick, lose formation, misunderstand an order, it's all the same. The punishment isn't hidden. If you falter, they make an example of you, often loudly and painfully in front of your fellow recruits. A blow with the flat of a sword or extra hours spent digging ditches corrects your weakness. At first, it feels unfair, like cruelty for its own sake. But over time, you begin to understand. They aren't trying to break you, they're trying to reshape you into something Rome can trust on the battlefield. The rhythm of boots hitting dirt fills the air. It's not just the sound of men marching, it's the heartbeat of Rome's army. You're handed your gear, a heavy shield, a gladius, 2 pilum javelins, a helmet, tools, and rations. Together, it weighs nearly half of what you do, and once it's strapped to your back, it feels more like a punishment than preparation. But there are no complaints, no sympathetic nods. You hoist it and fall in line because that's what's expected. The march begins before the sun fully rises, and the initial chill of the morning quickly gives way to the burn of effort. 20 miles. Roman miles, not the standard ones you measure farmland by. The roads beneath your feet vary. Some are perfectly laid stone highways built by Rome's engineers, while others are mud trails on the empire's borders. It doesn't matter what the terrain looks like. You march through it, over it without pause. The centurions demand a steady pace, and they get it. If you lag, you risk earning not just their wrath, but the ire of the soldiers behind you. No one wants to carry the weight of someone else's failure. Your body starts to rebel after only a few miles. A sharp sting builds in your shoulders where the leather straps of your pack dig into your skin. The soles of your feet swell against the packed dirt, and over time, the skin begins to split. You try not to look at the man marching beside you, because you know he's in the same pain, if not worse. There's no point in acknowledging it. Weakness isn't tolerated. If someone stumbles, they have seconds to recover. A man who collapses isn't carried by his comrades. He disappears behind the column, and the line trudges forward, each step erasing his spot in the formation. No chance to drop your equipment and rest. Instead, you're handed a shovel or an axe and told to dig. The day's work isn't done until a fortified camp rises where there was once empty land. Trenches are dug deep enough to swallow a man. Stakes are sharpened, hammered into place until the perimeter bristles with defenses. The palisades are raised, one beam at a time, until the camp stands ready to resist any enemy foolish enough to attack during the night. Only then, long after the legs beneath you threaten to give out, are you allowed to stop. Even then, it's not for rest. It's time to eat, which you manage in silence while staring at the battered hands that now feel like they belong to someone else. Every move, every action is controlled. Even water, the single thing you crave most during the endless march, isn't something you take when you want it. Centurions monitor the ranks, deciding when it's time to stop for a quick drink. Until then, your lips crack and your tongue turns dry under the weight of effort. It's not cruelty, it's control. In battle, discipline like this can save your life. A man who drinks freely when marching might collapse from thirst when the fight begins, and that's a risk your commanders won't take. Day by day, the fatigue shifts from unbearable to constant. The weight on your back seems lighter not because it is, but because a strange part of you adapts. You stop thinking of the shield as a thing you carry. You think of it as part of yourself. The endless drills, the digging, the marching, it's not suffering for its own sake. You start to realize what all of this is shaping you into. Together, you and the hundreds of men beside you have become a single organism, a machine that moves no matter the conditions. That's why Rome wins wars, because every step forward is inevitable. You aren't just surviving this, you're becoming it. Your armor is the first thing you notice, and not in a good way. The lorica segmentata, Rome's famous segmented armor, is heavy and awkward. It clinks and shifts with every step, the plates digging into your shoulders and leaving tender bruises after just a few hours. The straps pinch at your sides, and the stiff leather bindings along your chest feel unyielding. At first, every moment in it feels unnatural, as if the armor is resisting you as much as you're resisting it. But as days pass, you begin to adjust. You learn to shift your weight when you turn, to anticipate the pull of the plates when you raise your shield. Little by little, the armor becomes something you don't just wear, it becomes part of you. Taking care of that armor, however, becomes a lesson all its own. Everyone tells you the same thing: fail to maintain your gear, and you fail yourself. Every day, you polish the metal plates of your lorica, ensuring no rust eats away at the steel that might one day save your life. Your galea, the bronze helmet with cheek guards and a reinforced ridge, gets the same treatment. Any scratch is smoothed out with oil. Any weakness is repaired before it becomes a problem. Even your cingulum, the heavy belt with metal plates and decorative studs, must shine, not because it's a display of wealth, but because the slightest flaw could weaken its structure. Your caligae, the military sandals, are deceptively simple. At first glance, they don't look like much, straps of leather bound to thick soles. The cutouts allow your feet to breathe on long marches, but they also leave your toes exposed. As functional as they are, they still demand constant care. A loose strap could slow you down or cause a blister to fester, and no one wants to be the soldier falling behind. Every evening, after the endless drilling or marching, you and the other men sit together, repairing straps and reinforcing the spikes on the soles. It's not glamorous, but it's survival. The gladius, your short sword, is another revelation. When they first hand it to you, it doesn't seem intimidating. At just over 2 feet long, it feels too small to be a weapon of war. But then training starts and you realize its true purpose. You're taught to thrust, not slash. A slash is wild, exposing too much of your body, but the gladius is designed for precision. Quick stab into the enemy's belly or through his ribs is far more deadly than an overhead swing. You grip the hilt tightly, feeling its weight, and practice pulling it from the scabbard over and over until it feels like second nature. Then there's the scutum. At nearly 4 feet tall and curved to wrap around your body, this rectangular shield is both armor and a weapon in its own right. Its weight is punishing at first, making your arm burn after holding it even a few minutes. But soon, you learn its secrets. You're taught to angle the shield to deflect blows, to use the reinforced edge to bash into an opponent and send him stumbling. In formation, the scutum transforms into a wall, virtually impenetrable when paired with the shields of your comrades. Your gear becomes more than just something you wear. It becomes something you live with. At night, it's within arm's reach as you sleep. During meals, it's close beside you. Losing any piece of it isn't just frowned upon, it's a punishable offense. A missing helmet, for example, could mean a flogging. Selling one's armor or weapons? That's an act of desertion, and the penalty is death. The gear is far more than metal and leather. It's the bond between you and the Legion. As the sun dips below the horizon, you march through the wooden gates of the Castrum. It's not your first time seeing one, but the sheer structure and discipline of it still catch your eye. Everywhere here has a purpose, every step designed with absolute precision. Perfectly organized, the camp follows the same grid-like design no matter where it's built, an oasis of uniformity, whether it's deep in hostile territory or near a Roman town. The layout doesn't just make navigation simple, it creates a world where discipline is mirrored in every street and wall. The moment you step inside, there's no wandering or hesitation. Every soldier knows their place the instant the gates close behind them. Your assigned space is with your contubernium, an 8-man group you now live, eat, and sleep alongside. This tent isn't just your shelter, it's your world. Your contubernium, in many ways, becomes your new family. There's no avoiding them, even if someone's habits test your patience. Inside the cramped tent, you'll sleep on simple mats shoulder to shoulder with the men beside you. At first, the lack of privacy feels suffocating, but over time, the shared hardships bind you together. Whether you like it or not, these are the men you'll trust with your life. Beyond the tents, the camp is a bustling network of order. The streets form a rigid grid, all lending to the heart of the Castrum, where the Principia, or headquarters, stands. Here, the standards of the Legion are kept, symbols of Rome's power and unity. To the men, these aren't just banners or trophies, they're sacred. Losing one in battle would be a disgrace beyond words. The commander's quarters are located nearby, alongside the armory and other essential structures. Even the spaces for cooking, repairing, and training are carefully placed. Nothing here is random. It's like living inside a machine, every part working together. Daily life in the Castrum is far from restful. You're responsible for cooking your own rations, usually a simple porridge supplemented with whatever you can find or trade for. Spare time isn't really spare, as there's always something to be done, whether it's repairing equipment, sharpening weapons, or patching sections of the wooden palisade that encircle the camp. Laziness isn't just frowned upon, it's punished. This isn't a place for indifference or weakness. Even men accustomed to the backbreaking work of farm life are pushed harder here. Rome expects discipline, even in the small things. When night falls, the camp doesn't fully sleep. Guard duty rotates through the ranks, and when it's your turn to patrol, you'll stay sharp, or else. Staring out from the watchtowers, you scan the dark landscape beyond the ditch and earthen walls. Every shadow feels suspicious, every sound louder in the night's quiet. You grip your sword hilt, knowing the punishment for nodding off is harsh. Flogging is common, but deserters or repeat offenders face worse. You're reminded constantly that the safety of hundreds relies on vigilance, even in the dead of night. Life in the Castrum is harsh and comforts are few. The tents are cold in winter and sweltering in summer. The food is bland and privacy almost non-existent, yet there's a strange sense of safety within these wooden walls. The barriers, the strict rules, the unwavering rhythm of daily life, all of it creates a small, impenetrable world. Behind these palisades, the dangers of the Empire seem distant for a while. The hardest part is remembering that eventually, those gates will open again. Food for a Roman soldier isn't about pleasure, it's about survival. By the time you sit down to eat, your body doesn't care about flavor. It just craves something to keep you moving. Meals are predictable, stripped down to essentials and rationed carefully. You learn that eating isn't an experience, it's just another form of discipline. A typical breakfast is small and straightforward. You might start the day with a chunk of unleavened bread, a handful of olives, and if supplies are generous, a bit of aged cheese. The bread is hard and dry, and chewing it feels more like a chore than nourishment. You take your time, not because you're enjoying it, but because once it's gone, it's gone. Food needs to last, so every bite matters. Men who rush through their rations often regret it by midday. Lunch might be a repeat of the morning offerings, or if you're lucky, a bowl of pulse. This barley porridge is the backbone of a legionary's diet. Thick, bland, and heavy, it fills your stomach and gives you the energy to keep going. It's little more than boiled grains with a bit of salt, but sometimes it's mixed with scraps of vegetables or lentils for variety. Rarely, if ever, is it exciting to eat, but it sticks to your ribs and fuels the endless labor of the day, from digging trenches to practicing formations. Dinner is the most significant meal of the day, though still modest by any standard. Cooked over a communal fire, it involves more pulls, of course, along with anything else that can be added to the pot. Sometimes, one unlucky recruit burns the batch, ruining it for everyone. If this happens, the grumbling from his tent mates will ensure he doesn't make the same mistake twice. If meat is on the menu, it's usually something preserved: salted pork, smoked bacon, or dried fish brought in by supply wagons. Fresh meat is almost a fantasy. The only time you're likely to taste it is after a victorious campaign, or when a farmer's stray animal wanders too close to camp. Even then, portions are small, shared in strict measure. One staple becomes your constant companion: Posca. This is a drink made by mixing vinegar with water. Extremely sour and far from pleasant at first. It takes some getting used to. But after long marches or days in the hot sun, something about it becomes oddly satisfying. It quenches thirst and, more importantly, keeps the water safer to drink by killing bacteria. Over time, you find yourself craving it, even when clean water is available. Posca isn't just a drink, it's part of your life as a soldier. Hunger is something you learn to live with. On long campaigns, food becomes scarcer and rations stretch thinner. You learn which wild roots and herbs growing along your path are edible. Old bread, too stale to chew easily, is softened with water before you can eat it. Your stomach never feels full, and the thought of luxurious meals back at home becomes a distant, almost painful memory. But you don't complain. Every man around you feels the same gnawing emptiness in his gut. Complaining won't bring more food, and it might even bring a punishment for whining. The smell of incense fills the air, thick and heavy, as you shuffle forward with the rest of the line. All eyes are on the sacellum, a modest shrine nestled deep within the camp. Its walls are simple, but the objects inside, those are anything but. The Legion's standards, tall and unmoving, dominate the space. At their center, gleaming even in dim light, is the eagle. To you, it isn't just a piece of metal. It represents everything: Rome, its power, its immortality. The eagle pulls at something primal in you, a mix of awe and fear. You lower your head, not daring to meet its gaze. When it's your turn, your movements feel automatic. You've done this before countless times, but it never feels routine. You open your hand to drop a coin, a tiny offering to the gods and the empire itself. It clinks faintly as it lands beside the others. As the smell of burning incense stings your eyes, you murmur a prayer. It's not just for you. It's for the Legion, for the man standing next to you, for the 1,000 souls who fight under the same banner. You pray for their survival as much as your own. That eagle, the one resting so still now, holds all of your lives within it. The gods of Rome are everywhere: Jupiter, Mars, Minerva. You believe in them because you grew up surrounded by their statues and stories. But when you glance to your side, you notice one of your teammates crossing his arms in a peculiar way, a private gesture to Mithras, his chosen deity. Another man drops to a knee in silent devotion to Isis, the Egyptian goddess he prays to for protection. There's no judgment here, no argument over gods. Everyone knows the real rules: honor the rituals, obey the augurs, and never, ever disrespect the rights of the Legion. Anything beyond that is your own business. Before every battle, the priests step forward. They're no ordinary priests, they are augurs, masters of interpreting the will of the gods. One holds a small bronze cage, releasing a bird into the open air. Another grips a knife, examining the entrails of a sacrificed animal spread out on a clean white cloth. They mutter in hushed tones and motion to the centurions. If the omens read well, the march continues. If they're bad, everything stops. And it stops completely. No arguments, no exceptions. To an outsider, it might seem ridiculous that the actions of a bird or the shape of a liver could dictate the movement of an entire army. But to you, it isn't even a question. You've seen it yourself. Men refuse to step forward on cursed days. Better to wait than defy the gods and invite ruin. In these moments, you speak no goodbyes or words of luck. Instead, you say one thing: Fortuna. It's small, weighty, and to the point. It's not just a wish, it's a lifeline. Fortuna means survival. It means you walk back to the camp instead of becoming just another body left on the field. You hold on to that word tightly, knowing it could be the last one you ever say. When a soldier dies, the camp moves quickly. A shallow grave is dug, his body placed inside with minimal ceremony. His hands are crossed over his chest, a pair of coins laid on his eyes or tucked under his tongue. You don't have time to ask his name, let alone grieve. But there's a moment of silence, however brief, where you honor him. To you, he was a stranger. To the gods, he is a brother. The rituals might feel endless at first, nothing more than a chore before you march into danger. But over time, they become something else, something solid. They steady your nerves. They give you focus when fear starts to gnaw at your edges. You don't have to believe in every god. You just have to believe in their power to hold you together when everything else is falling apart. Your contubernum is where your life as a soldier begins and ends. A group of 8 men crammed together in one tent, sharing everything from sleeping mats to the weight of battle. On the first day, you can't even pronounce half of their names. They're just faces to you. A tall one who never speaks, a wiry one with an empty laugh, some others who seem as nervous as you feel. You nod, exchange quick, awkward greetings, and swallow whatever fear sits in your throat. By the end of the first week, you've learned to tell them apart, not just by their features, but by the way they move. The heavy step of one, the way another drags his heel, or the sharp rhythm of a cough in the middle of the night. It doesn't take long for the friction to start. Tempers flare in the heat of the day or the exhaustion of the march. Someone snoring drives everyone mad. Someone eats more than their share of the barley, an offense punished with sharp words or sharp fists. It's not personal, it's pressure from every direction. But no matter how much you argue, the bond tightens. By the time your training is over, arguments turn into trust. You're no longer just a tent full of strangers. You're something else, a unit. Not because you're friends, though some of you will become that over time. No, it's because survival demands it. The first time your contubernum is ordered to carry supplies together, you feel the shift. Each of you strapped with equipment heavy enough to break a man's back, you stagger forward under the shared burden. When one of you falters, the others grumble, but they adjust, pulling the weight together until the load evens out again. That rhythm doesn't stop in the field. In battle, you carry more than just physical loads. Blood, fear, sweat, they all spread quickly between 8 men. There's no hiding it when someone's hands shake before the first clash, or when someone vomits from sheer terror. You don't mock them, though. You just look away, the way you hope they'll look away when it's your turn to break. At the campfire, the tension loosens. That's when the private jokes emerge, born out of long marches and harsher punishments. They aren't funny to anyone but you and the 7 men who share your smoke-blackened pot of barley mush. Laughter doesn't make the days easier, but it fills in the cracks, holds you steady when you're frayed at the edges. You start noticing the details that only you 8 would catch, the way the youngest grinds his teeth at night, the habit another has of muttering prayers to Saturn under his breath when he thinks no one's listening. Not everything is lighthearted. When punishment strikes, it never strikes alone. If one man buckles under pressure, the rest pay for it. Digging an extra ditch, carrying more weight, or worse, enduring the shame of collective flogging. It's infuriating in the moment, but you quickly learn a weak link in the group means death in real combat. You don't complain when you're punished. Instead, you fix the crack. And when one of you falls, no one forgets. His gear is gathered, his body burned or buried, and if he had a wife or parents back home, a letter is sent. It might not be poetic or heartfelt, but it is written, because no soldier of the Contubernium fades away without acknowledgement. The centurion will scream at you, drill you into the dirt, but even he knows this bond is what keeps Rome's machine unbreakable in war. That bond, among 8 men squeezed into one tent with one cooking pot, is stronger than steel. One day, your boots slog through the dense, dark forests of Gaul where the trees cast shadows thick enough to feel like walls. The next, the landscape shifts, wide, flat deserts under the scorching Syrian sun, so bright it feels like the heat itself blinds you. There's no easing into these transitions. Rome does not wait for you to adjust. It does not ask if you are strong enough. Orders come, the standard is raised, and you move. From the muted greens of Germania to the baked red dust of Africa, it's the same. March, set camp, repeat. The roads ahead stretch endlessly, straight lines carved into the world, unbending even when mountains rise or rivers run across them. They are ancient creations of Rome's engineers, smooth enough that wagons roll steadily and footsteps beat a rhythm. You march with hundreds behind you, hundreds ahead. There is no room for stragglers. The heat radiates from the ground by daytime, and the cold tickles your bones each night. These roads, you know, were laid by men no different than you. You think, with a bitter grin, about how someday some other farmers-turned-soldiers might tread over the stones you now walk on. There's no comfort at the end of each day's march. When the order to halt comes, you don't find a bed waiting, you find more work. You drop your staggeringly heavy gear and pick up a shovel. Trenches must be dug, walls and defenses raised. It's a rhythm you've come to accept. March for hours, then build. Your mind no longer rebels against the grind, but your body still feels the burn. You doze off under the stars, armor still pinching at your shoulders. Nothing in the world brings true sleep, especially when enemies might lurk just outside the ring of torches. The places you march through are alive with people. Locals, they tell you, watching silently from their fields as the column slinks through, one sandaled foot in front of the other. Sometimes it's different. People throw flowers, cheer, call you saviors. But just as often, rocks and curses follow your shadow. In one village, they hiss and spit. In another, children run alongside you, chanting what little Latin they've picked up. To them, legions are larger-than-life monsters, but you're not sure which part of monster they fear and which part they admire. You've learned not to care either way. Applause and hatred weigh the same. Everything else about the lands changes around you. The signs etched on stone become incomprehensible. Gods you've never heard of stand in temple after temple. Languages shift like the sand dunes of Egypt. And yet, there is one truth you've learned to rely on. Rome itself does not change. The drills you performed in Gaul are the same ones you repeat in the Levant. The camps you leave behind look identical to the ones your unit builds tomorrow. Even the leather on your sandals reminds you that you are part of something bigger, older, unyielding. Some days, when your legs threaten to give out after miles of marching, the task does not end. After 25 miles under a sun that drains the color from your skin, you still have a fortified camp to raise before night takes its place. You wipe sweat from the edges of your eyes, dirt streaking your face, knowing there are no exceptions. This life is not a story of glory or adventure. It is relentless. The march itself is the battle, and against all odds, Rome always wins. You hear them first, their voices tearing across the air, sinking into your chest. War cries in a language you can't understand, mixing with the low thrum of drums heavy enough to shake the ground beneath your feet. The vibrations climb through your legs as though the earth itself pulses with life. Somewhere ahead, just beyond the rise, the enemy gathers. For days, you've known this moment was coming, but now that it's here, it feels like a distant thing, a story playing out far away. Yet, your pulse doesn't lie. It quickens, hard and steady, sending heat to your hands. Your fingers flex on the grip of your shield, waiting, ready. This is what you've trained for. Every mile marched, every command roared in your face, all of it leads here. When the enemy finally crests the hill, their appearance shocks you. Sometimes they're as wild as the stories say, screaming like animals, their faces smeared with paint that twists them into something almost inhuman. Rusted weapons wave in the air, axes, clubs, spears that look like they've been stolen from farmlands rather than forged for war. But on other days, the enemy looks eerily familiar. They stand equipped with formation and purpose, shields raised, armor glinting in the sun, their weapons sharp and polished. Some might be deserters or captured soldiers pressed into service. Either way, they're mirrored reflections of discipline. In both cases, it doesn't matter. Wild or organized, they have one goal: you. Their hatred is vivid enough to cut through the distance, and you know they won't stop until you are gone. Your centurion barked the order to form up before the enemy came into view, and now your shield locks into place beside the others. It's a wall, impenetrable, unified. Shoulder to shoulder, every movement is controlled and precise. You don't spare a glance at the men opposite you. Your vision stays set forward, only to catch glimmers of your centurion ahead. His calm demeanor acts like an anchor. He's been here before, more times than you can count, and even his stillness feels like a command. If he's calm, you can be too. So you swallow lightly, steady your breathing, and let the routine take over. You've already heard the stories whispered in the tent on quieter nights. The tales of men freezing when the first war cry hits, running before a sword is even drawn, or retching behind the lines as fear takes hold and refuses to let go. The part of you that doubts wonders if you'll be one of them. But the horn sounds, a sharp blare that cuts clean through the thought, and there's no more room for wondering. All hesitation is drowned in an ocean of movement. The air comes alive around you as arrows whistle overhead. Some snap against shield in a sharp clatter of wood and metal. Others find their marks in a way that makes your stomach tighten. You can't afford to look. Your eyes don't move from the small space visible under your shield's edge. The shout comes from your side, something panicked, but you don't turn to it. Your hands feel the rhythm instead. The grip on your shield digs into your palm, the pressure growing as the line advances. The command roars again, forward. When the moment comes, fear doesn't surface, not in the way you thought it might. Instead, something colder fills its place. Focus. Every step feels rehearsed because it is. The countless bruises, the sleepless nights of drills, they flood back through your body as you thrust forward, shield tight, gladius poised. Everything feels automatic, not natural, as though your body belongs to someone else entirely, someone trained only to kill. And then you understand the truth. The enemy across the field isn't the hardest fight. It's not their shouts or their blades. The real enemy? The chaos inside you. The noise trying to shatter your control. The pain clawing at your ribs. The temptation to break ranks or falter just once. If you can conquer that, if you can push through the screaming madness inside your head, you've already won. The field, the swords, the blood, that's just the aftermath. The battle, like Rome always reminded you, begins in the mind first. Shield up. You feel the steady weight of it meeting resistance as you lock into formation with the man beside you. A command shouts above the noise, and your feet listen even as your mind struggles to keep up. Step forward, thrust. The gladius in your hand finds its target, not with precision, but with habit. You're not aiming for glory, that would be stupid. You aim for one thing: weakness. The armor's gaps, the soft flesh where the ribs end, the exposed area just under a chin that's tilted too far skyward. Your blade strikes, retreats, and strikes again, the relentless rhythm of survival. Time does something strange in the heat of battle. It doesn't march forward, steady and predictable like it does in life or on the endless roads of the Empire. Instead, it twists itself into knots, an hour collapsing into a heartbeat or a single second stretching long enough to feel unbearable. You can't tell which it is, you don't even try. The edges of the world blur, and all that exists is the armor pressing into your shoulders, the sharp sting of sweat sliding into your eyes, and the wet sound your blade makes when it finds its mark. You feel blood on your hand, warm and sticky, though you don't know if it's yours or someone else's. The smell is another assault. You'd think it wouldn't register in the chaos, but it does. Sharp, unrelenting, as strong as the urges pushing you forward. Sweat dominates, not fresh sweat, but the stale, sour kind that comes from fear and exhaustion mixing under the weight of iron. There's dirt, too, kicked up by hundreds of shuffling feet and sticking to every exposed patch of skin. And then there's the iron tang of blood. It's everywhere. It clings to you, to your comrades, to the very air you breathe. You haven't tasted food since sunrise, but now all you taste is metal. The line shifts, adjusts. Someone on your left collapses, a sharp, wet sound followed by the unmistakable thud of a body hitting the ground. You don't look. You know better. A man steps forward to fill the empty space, his shield locking into yours like it was never unbroken. The formation holds, and so do you, trusting, no, expecting that the man behind you will do the same when it's your turn to fall. You want to glance back to see if he's still there, but there's no time. Your shield needs lifting. Your sword needs thrusting. Pain creeps into your body, not sharp, but dull, spreading across your shoulders, your arms, and your legs. Your muscles tremble under the strain, your movements slower now, heavier. Your arms ache to drop the shield, the gladius, to let it all go, but you don't stop. You can't. You stay in the rhythm, not because it feels heroic, but because it's the only thing keeping you alive. Swing, step, block, breathe. You do it again and again, and somehow despite the tide of panic and exhaustion pushing against it, the formation holds. When the end finally comes, there's no triumphant shout, no rallying cry of victory. It doesn't happen like that. It just ends. You glance up, chest heaving, and realize there's no one left standing across from you. The battlefield quiets, but the silence isn't peaceful. It's heavy, ragged, filled with the sounds of dying breaths and the broken cries of the wounded. Your legs feel like they might give out. Your hands won't stop shaking. But it's not fear you're shaking from. It's everything. The adrenaline, the effort, the sheer force of will that kept you moving when you thought you couldn't. For now, though, the sword falls from your hand. Somehow, you're still breathing, and for this brief moment, that's enough. The clamor of battle fades, but the war doesn't. The enemy may have broken, their flags scattered and their warriors dead or fleeing, but your work has only begun. The battlefield shifts to what's left behind. Not triumph, not glory, but the aftermath. Smoke rises in the distance where a village once stood, its streets now torn apart by fire and desperation. You march through its remains, stepping over what you force yourself to think of as nothing more than objects, shattered doors, trampled possessions, and bodies. Not all of them wear armor. Some are smaller, some are unarmed, but you train your eyes forward. Staring makes it worse. Not staring doesn't make it any better. Looting begins quickly, almost methodically. Soldiers scavenge what they can: coins, tools, food, anything worth carrying back to camp. If the locals surrendered early, what little remains might be spared. But if they fought, even briefly, mercy isn't a word anyone remembers. You're ordered to clear what's left, burn crops, topple walls, drag livestock out from hiding. Rome spares nothing that might help the enemy recover. To you, it feels like a second kind of fighting, one without swords, but just as brutal. You dig trenches outside enemy fortifications, your shovel moving as relentlessly as your blade once did. Victory on the battlefield might feel instant, but here in the ruins, it drags on. An endless rhythm of destruction where your back aches more than your sword arm ever has. When you're not clearing rubble or working the tools of siege warfare, you're on the move again, guarding the lifeline that keeps the Legion alive. The supply wagons crawl through hostile land, their wooden wheels groaning under sacks of grain and amphorae of water. Escort duty looks simple at first. March alongside, weapons ready, another dull routine after so many campaigns. But you stay on edge. The hillside shadows seem too dark, the road ahead too quiet. Then, one clang of steel from nowhere snaps the air, and what seems routine turns into chaos. You've seen entire convoys lost to one ambush, the food, the men, the horses, gone. You've learned to watch, to wait, to keep a hand near your gladius while your eyes scan every movement in the brush. One mistake in vigilance, and it's not just rations that are wiped out. Even when ambushes hold back, the land still takes its toll. Some villages resist with force, but others find subtler ways to strike back. You stop drinking from wells you don't dig yourself. You grow suspicious of every offer of food from smiling strangers. You hear rumors of poisoned grain and meat that never tastes quite right. It seems absurd, paranoia perhaps, but then a man in your unit collapses after a single sip of water from a stranger's jug. What you feared becomes real, and every bite and drink after that tastes like mistrust. Then there are the prisoners. Driven forward like cattle, chained in lines, they stumble past the Legion's weary march. Some are locals taken hostage to ensure obedience. Others are defeated warriors, stripped of their weapons and dignity. Guarding them is not an honor. It's a task that builds resentment in your gut. They look at you with either blank resignation or eyes filled with venom. Killing them would be simple, but Rome usually prefers submission. It's your job to make sure prisoners live long enough to scare their villages into surrender. Each day away from the battlefield strips you of your sense of self, piece by piece. You're no longer just a soldier. Now, you're an extension of Rome's will, shaping the empire by force wherever you go, whether through destruction or sheer presence. War never truly feels over. It's not just the moments when blades clash and banners fall. It's the weight of destroying more than you protect. At some point, you stop asking when it will end. Some things, you realize, will follow you long after the marching stops. At first, the enemy was a shape in the distance, a faceless, nameless figure brought to life in the campfire stories of your comrades. They were barbarians, savages, little more than animals in the way they fought, or so you were told. You pictured them as monsters cloaked in chaos, all ragged edges and mindless violence. It was easier that way, to imagine them as something entirely different, something so far removed from yourself that killing didn't carry weight, just duty. But when you see them up close, the image cracks. They aren't monsters, they're men. After a battle, you come across a fallen figure, his body slumped awkwardly in the dirt where he made his last stand. His grip still clutches tight around a small wooden charm hanging from a frayed cord. You stare at it. Is it a god, a trinket carved for good luck, or maybe a gift made by a child whose name you'll never know? It doesn't matter. Suddenly, the enemy, the barbarian as you've always called him, isn't just a nameless body. He's someone who believed in something, someone who loved and was loved. For a moment, it feels like looking in a mirror. That thought, uninvited and uncomfortable, settles in and lingers. When prisoners are taken alive, you see them as more than shadows on the other side of the field. Some spit at you, their faces twisted in fury so raw you can almost feel its heat. Others sink to their knees, begging, their words incoherent but universal in their desperation. But a few meet your eyes with a calm resignation, as if they already know what comes next. It's unsettling, the way a man can face death with a stillness that makes you question whether you could do the same. You watch these men and wonder, for the first time, which one would you be if the roles were reversed? The battlefield fades into memory, but the sounds don't. Their voices stay with you, those strange foreign tongues carrying grief and anger in tones you understand even without knowing the words. A mother wails over a son who will never rise again. A lover kneels silently beside a man who has bled into the dust. You don't have to know their language to know their pain. In these moments, they don't seem so different from the families you left behind, the ones you fight for. As the campaigns stretch on, certain patterns reveal themselves. You learn the way different tribes fight, quick ambushes from the dense forests of Germania, reckless charges from the Celtic warriors who seem to value bravery over life, and tight, organized formations from the more disciplined foes. Each battle teaches you something new about their strategies, their weapons, and their purpose. Some fights feel clever, calculated, almost ingenious. Others feel desperate, more panic than plan, as though they're clinging to the last thread of survival. But in the end, all of them fight for one thing: to defend what is theirs. Then, one day, the question creeps in. how do they see you? Their eyes speak volumes you can't fully grasp. Do they look at you as a tyrant sent by distant rulers to crush them under Rome's weight? A faceless sword, one of thousands breaking through their lands like an unrelenting wave? Or is there some part of them, no matter how deeply buried, that sees Rome as a force of order, of power? Deep down, you suspect the thought of you as hero fades into dust before it even takes shape. You stop thinking of the enemy as evil. Their gods are not your gods, but you see the same prayers in their eyes. Their armor is different, but the fear beneath it matches your own. By the end of the campaign, you understand. They fight, bleed, and die just like you do. In the end, the only difference is the banner. They don't look like you, and they don't fight like you, but the auxiliaries are as much a part of Rome's machine as the legions themselves. They gather from every corner of the empire, Syria, Gaul, Thrace, Numidia, brought together under one purpose: serve Rome for 25 years, endure the dangers of war, and walk away with citizenship, a prize most men wouldn't dare to dream of. It's a life built on risk. For some, it's an escape from poverty. For others, it's survival in a land where resistance to Rome isn't an option. Whatever their reasons, these men march beside you, bleed beside you, and often die before you. While your strength lies in rigid formation and tireless discipline, theirs adds something different. A cavalryman from Numidia rides circles around infantry with a speed that's near impossible to counter. Archers from Syria draw their bows with a precision that could thread a needle from 100 paces. Thracians wield their curved blades, striking with agility where shields can't rotate fast enough. They fight using techniques born from their homelands, honed through centuries of survival before Rome even set eyes on their territory. It makes them unpredictable to enemies and indispensable to you. They aren't trained into conformity the way you are. Their value is in their difference. If you're honest, you envy them sometimes. Their gear is lighter, their movements freer. They don't spend hours locked in endless drills or hauling the same crushing packs across endless miles. Their role doesn't demand the same monotony yours does. When their turn comes, it's decisive and sharp, a strike calculated with precision and released like an arrow. But the envy fades when you think about the trade-offs. Auxiliaries are paid less than you, buried with less honor, and often overlooked by Rome's historians. Their victories are your victories, yet the glory rarely bears their name. No triumphal arches are carved for the men who held the flanks while you fought in the center. They fight for Rome, but they're not called Roman, not until they've given most of their life to earn that title. In battle, the auxiliaries aren't your shield wall. They're the reason your shield wall holds. While you advance in formation, smashing against the enemy like a battering ram, they're sweeping the flanks, cutting off escape routes, picking off scattered fighters. And when the line falters, as it inevitably does, it's often them who rush into the gaps. Their arrival isn't always elegant, but it's effective. You've seen it yourself. The flash of Batavian cavalry galloping into crumbling formation just as the enemy begins to press in, buying enough time for you to regroup. Without them, victories would come far harder, and defeats would come far more often. At night around the fire, the differences between you seem to fade. They bring songs and stories that feel more like riddles than epics. Words you don't understand strung together in melodies you can't shake from your head. You share wine and stale bread, laugh at the universal absurdities of war, and slowly, the lines between legionary and auxiliary blur. Brotherhood in the ranks wasn't built on shared ancestry or gods. It's built on surviving together, on dragging one another through the trenches of hell and hoping both of you make it out alive. Not all auxilia are equal, though. Some units grow into legends in their own right. The Batavian cavalry becomes so feared that Roman generals keep them together for generations, their reputation burning brighter with each campaign. Syrian archers, dreaded for their sharp eyes and steady hands, become a necessary part of every major battle plan, their arrows raining death long before the legion can raise a sword. Watching them in the field, you start to understand they're not add-ons or auxiliaries in the sense of being second-rate. They're specialists. Their skill doesn't replace your discipline, it completes it. Together, you create the hammer that breaks Rome's enemies, no matter who those enemies are. The name auxiliary might suggest otherwise, but standing beside them, you see the truth. They're not supporting the legions. They are Rome. The moment of impact feels distant, almost unreal. A warm trickle runs down your arm, but you don't stop moving. Your training won't let you. It's only when the fighting slows that you glance down, and suddenly it hits. Pain. Sharp, searing. Your mind races, but there's no time to panic. Someone shouts for a medicus, and you realize it's for you. When they arrive, there's no time for questions or gentleness. A piece of cloth is shoved between your teeth, your only warning of what's coming next. The medic doesn't hesitate. He's been doing this too long to flinch. A knife scrapes flesh to widen the wound, and hot vinegar floods the gash. The sting burns through your body like lightning, but pain is safer than infection. You bite down, scream against the cloth. Around you, every soldier screams. It's a sound that binds you in its brutality, because here, there's no bravado, no pretense, only survival. If you're patched up enough to move, they'll send you back to fight. But for those who can't stand, the valetudinarium awaits. It's a grim place, tucked into camp wherever there's space. Rows of makeshift cots stretch out, filled with shivering, pale men. The air is thick, almost unbreathable. Blood, sweat, and the overwhelming tang of medicinal herbs trying to cover the rot. You collapse onto a wooden frame with straw poking through. The man next to you clutches a bandaged stump where his hand used to be. He's praying under his breath, but you can't make out the words. You wonder if he'll leave this place alive, or if you will. In here, injuries are indifferent to rank or skill. There's no glory in infection, no honor in illness. The strongest fighter might fall to a scratch gone bad, while another survives the impossible. Long gashes stitched roughly together with dirty thread, an arrow yanked free from his thigh, a spear wound that should have ended him days ago. Every recovery feels like a battle won. But death is just as common. At night, you hear coughing turn quiet, or a groan taper off into nothing. In the morning, those bodies are gone, wrapped in cloth, carried out quickly, and buried even faster. Funerals are quiet, almost mechanical. If there's time, someone whispers a prayer or places a coin for the soul's journey. Then the shovel does its work. Shallow graves, no speeches, no delay. Rome doesn't wait for mourning. You think about that more often now, how fast it can all be swept away. That's when you carve your name into your shield, your belt, your scabbard. Anything someone might use to identify you later. It's not about avoiding theft anymore. It's about leaving proof that you existed, even if your face won't be recognizable. Day after day, you see the same routine: blood, screams, stitched cuts, silent burials. Over time, you notice how close you've started sleeping to your gear. Not just for safety, but because it feels like the only part of you that might endure. The possibility of dying doesn't scare you. It's the idea of being erased, forgotten, reduced to just another nameless casualty in Rome's endless ambitions. When you close your eyes at night, you don't dream of home or victory anymore. You dream of not disappearing. You press your hand over the wound, still tender, and hope to wake up tomorrow in one piece. In this life, that's about as close to certainty as you'll ever get. Some mornings, the camp wakes quietly. No barking orders, no centurion pacing the rows. Just the low murmur of men stirring awake and the faint calls of distant birds. The scent of bread baking over a campfire drifts on the cool air, mingling with the earthy smell of damp ground. For once, you feel like more than just another piece of Rome's machine. For a moment, you feel human again. You spend that time with your tent mates, voices lowered, the usual tension softened into something resembling camaraderie. A handful of dice appear, crudely carved from bone, and the bets are miserably simple. Pebbles, small trinkets, an extra sip of wine. The lucky ones smirk as they collect their winnings. The unlucky ones protest, accusing each other of cheating. It doesn't matter. Arguments dissolve into laughter, the kind that makes you forget the hard ground beneath you and the armor waiting nearby. In these moments, you're not soldiers anymore, just men clinging to a sliver of normality. Once in a great while, a messenger arrives with letters. The scent of wax seals and parchment hints at homes you can barely remember. If you're among the few who can read, you unfold the letter slowly, savoring each word, even if it's only mundane. A sister's reminder to stay safe, a wife's note about the harvest. If you can't read, someone volunteers, or maybe you don't trust anyone enough to share what little you have left. Either way, there's a strange silence afterward. No one says much, but you can feel the weight settling across the camp, unspoken but shared. Some don't even open their letters. They've decided it's easier not to know what they're missing. When the camp allows it, you wander a little, searching for quiet. Maybe you find a spot by a stream where the water runs clear and cold, or a hill overlooking the camp where the wind carries the smell of wild grass instead of sweat and iron. Helmet off, sword resting at your side, you look at the expanse of the sky. It feels endless, like a glimpse of eternity. For a while, there's nothing to do but sit and think, or maybe not think at all. Time doesn't last the same way when you're not marching or fighting. You don't waste it, though. These moments are rare, and you've learned how to make them count. Some take the time to occupy their hands. You see men carving small figures from wood or stitching their sandals back together. Others squat by the fire, thumbing through worn-out prayer beads or small charms. A soldier nearby practices sword forms, striking the air in slow, precise motions, as if perfecting one move might tilt the odds in his favor when it matters. No one talks much. It isn't out of discomfort, it's just that peace in the Legion never feels complete. It's always tempered by the shadow of what's to come. Occasionally, villagers approach the edges of the camp with goods. A farmer's wife offers bread. A trader holds out bottles of red wine. Faces are cautious but inviting. With a few dented coins, you trade for something small and sweet. Maybe a formless cake smeared with honey. You take a bite, and suddenly, it feels foreign, almost impossible, that anything could taste like this. It floods your senses with a memory, a warm kitchen, a mother's hands stirring a pot. It's striking how much a simple flavor can bring home rushing back. You realize peace isn't the absence of war. It never was. It's these fleeting pauses, stretched out between storms, heavy with uncertainty, but filled at the same time with tiny reminders of life outside the Legion. You cling to them, not because they'll last, but because they won't. One day, the Centurion calls your name. It's unexpected, and the weight of it lands squarely in your chest. Men rarely get singled out unless something's gone wrong, so you rise quickly, muscles tense, eyes fixed straight ahead. But no punishment comes. Instead, he nods and says the word that changes everything: promotion. For a moment, you don't know where to place the mix of pride and dread rising in you. You've been noticed, and in the Legion, being noticed is a double-edged sword. Perhaps you've made a decurio, commanding a small cavalry unit, or an optio, second in command to the Centurion himself. With the promotion comes the authority to lead, to give orders instead of following them. But with that authority comes something more daunting: responsibility. You're now expected to manage the lives of the same men you fought beside, drank with, and even carried off the battlefield. They're no longer just your brothers. They're now your soldiers, and their failures are yours to answer for. Whether your commands save lives or end them, the burden rests squarely on your shoulders. At first, the rewards feel tangible. Your pay increases, your rations are better, maybe even a bit of wine more often than usual. Over time, you notice other small privileges, like your own sleeping space or the chance to skip a few of the harsher camp duties. Luxury in the Legion is relative, but this shift feels monumental. Still, you quickly realize these comforts come at a cost. You can't afford a mistake. Not now. If illness weakens you or exhaustion slows you down, someone dies, and it won't be just your problem. You learn to push through the fatigue and hide fear, no matter what it takes. Glory looks different than you imagined. When you first joined, it seemed bright, almost mythical. Tales of decorated war heroes returning in triumph to cheering crowds. But here, in the reality of war, glory is muted. It's surviving a charge when half the line collapses beside you. It's standing to accept a medal, the dull bronze glinting beneath the grime of the day, while your hands still reek of blood and battle. You hear your name spoken with new respect around the campfire, but instead of swelling with triumph, you feel something quieter, a grim recognition of what it took to earn it. Some men rise on sheer ability, mastering every skill the Legion demands. Others climb through bold acts, like saving an officer in the chaos of combat. And yet, there's always a spot for those who get there through luck, a spear missing them by an inch, a decision made in desperation that just happens to succeed. At first, you might resent those who skip the hard-earned path, but eventually, you stop judging. You understand that Rome rewards risk, regardless of the circumstances behind it. Survival itself starts to feel like an achievement. You hear stories of officers who rise even higher, some reaching the pinnacle of their careers as centurions, or advancing beyond the Legion to join Rome's equestrian order. They earn land, wealth, citizenship, the kind of stability you've almost forgotten exists. But those tales also include plenty of failures. Veterans who fell just short of their ambitions lie scattered throughout the history of the Legion, buried in the shallow graves of forgotten campaigns, their dreams left to rot with them. Their vacancies are just stepping stones for the living. So, you stop dreaming of glory as the poets describe it. You chase survival instead, the ability to lead, endure, and come out the other side intact. That's what glory becomes. It's not about the songs or speeches. It's about one thing: being remembered. Not just as a name etched into the edge of your shield, but as a man who existed, fought, and mattered in the endless, grinding march of Rome. For now, that's enough. It has to be. 25 years. That's how long you've carried the weight of Rome on your shoulders. 25 years of marching, fighting, fortifying, and bleeding for an empire that never pauses. Scars cross your body like a map of every campaign, every near-death experience. Your hair has thinned, and your steps are slower now, but you've done it. Against all odds, you've survived to hear the words so many dream of, but never lived to see. Honesta missio, honorable discharge. The Legion at last releases its grip on you. A bronze diploma is placed into your hands, its engraved plates catching the light as you stare at your name etched into history. It's not just a piece of metal, it's proof of everything you've endured, your reward for years spent in service. If you weren't born a citizen, you are now. If you were born into poverty, there's a patch of land waiting, or at the very least, a small sum of money. These rewards are more than promises. They are Rome's way of saying, you belong now. Your blood has earned it. Freedom feels strange. The camp, once so loud and cramped, becomes a fading memory as you step into the wider world. Initially, you don't know how to adjust. Falling asleep feels wrong without the scrape of weapons being cleaned nearby or the distant rumble of guard shifts. Your body tenses at every unfamiliar sound, a reflex sharpened by years of waking to the threat of ambush. The weight of your armor is gone, but you still walk stiffly, as though the ghost of it clings to your back. Even without orders, you catching yourself rising at dawn. Routine doesn't leave so easily. You've seen the two paths that many veterans take. Some settle near their last post, marry locals, and put down roots in land they once helped occupy. Others return to their hometowns, though home isn't quite what it was. The village you left no longer feels the same, and you no longer feel like the boy who once lived there. The world changed in your absence, but more importantly, so did you. The stories you carry of battles fought, brothers lost, and close calls aren't something you can share with the farmers or shopkeepers who now call you neighbor. Still, the land is good to you, whether you've returned to farm it or started again as a stranger in a new province. You plant vines in the rich soil, raise goats, and take comfort in the rhythm of harvests and seasons. Maybe you open a small tavern where the laughter of strangers reminds you of campfire nights long gone. Your Latin carries the clipped, deliberate tone of a soldier, and when your children, if you have them, grow strong enough, you place a wooden sword in their hands. Even if the plow comes first, they'll know how to hold a weapon. What you might not realize, though, is that even in peace, you're still part of Rome's broader plan. Many veterans are settled in newly conquered territories not just as a reward, but as tools of Romanization. Your presence here is part of the empire's silent conquest, bringing Roman law, language, and culture to the farthest edges of its reach. Without knowing it, you still serve the empire every time you build a house from stone or teach your son to write his name in Latin. When you walk through the village now, people glance at you differently. They don't step aside out of fear, but out of respect. The way you carry yourself, the calm in your eyes, tells them you're not like others here. They see the scars on your hands and know you've held a sword for far longer than they've held a tool. You've faced storms they never could comprehend, and though the storms have passed, those years will never quite leave you. Freedom feels strange, but the world feels stranger still. The Roman legionary wasn't just a soldier. He was the embodiment of endurance and discipline. From harsh marches to deadly battles, he carried the weight of an empire on his back. Ordinary men became something greater through unity, sacrifice, and relentless training. If you liked this video, subscribe for more history brought to life.